So here we are, welcome to another 4 Questions, Fourq, and I'm here with the awesome Mr. Sean Mayo. Hello, Sean.
Hello, Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, thanks. I'm going to drop Sean off at the Comedy Store, and I believe you're doing that tonight, Sean.
I'm doing 2 shows at the store, and glad of it I am.
I love it, I love it. Now what I do in this, I ask 4 questions, but I'm going to ask a bonus one of you, Sean.
Bonus question? So I'm special.
You are special, mate.
All right,
you are very special. Because you've got an interesting past. Before you started comedy,
yes.
You were either a drug dealer or a professional snooker player. I can't remember which one.
Yes, I can neither confirm or deny any of those things.
But it's all behind you now.
Well, it is. I used to play snooker full time, yes, that's true, for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And rose to the heady heights of, I think, 1, 2, 4 in the world.
Whoa!
Yeah, it sounds good.
That's great. That is great. That is
that's
good.
only because nowadays the standard is much, much higher. And but even so, I must admit, it didn't feel good at the time. But in hindsight, it feels all right.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I had my moments.
So, and do you think that's part of, in terms of, rising to the top of your game with what you do now? Is there? I'm not, blowing smoke, but like, you are a very disciplined comedian. And I've seen the way your mind works, and you really kind of think through your material in such a way. You're very kind of meticulous.
Yes.
Do you think that's just in you?
Well,
Being a pro sportsman. Do you think it translates?
I think there's a kind of, in snooker, you narrow it down and cut everyone out, so it requires total concentration that way to block everything out. And in here, to a certain extent, you have to try and widen the net. Yeah. So there's a kind of mirror image type thing here.
Right.
But I must admit, when people talk about being nervous on stage, there is a stage when you start where I think you think about 3 things. You think, will I remember the material? Yeah. Will I be funny? Will I get heckled? Yeah. And to start with, I thought the worst thing you do is forget what you're saying. So I kind of rehearsed it and over-rehearsed it, and it probably came out like that. And I kind of wanted to give off the aura that please don't mess with me. So those 2 things don't necessarily mean you're going to be funny, but you're going to get through it. Yeah. And you learn to relax a little bit more. But the feeling of nervousness when you're playing snooker, when you're literally 2 shots away from, say, winning 4-3 after being 3-0 down. Yeah. And it's there for you to lose. The tendency to want, as you do when you're nervous in comedy, to speed up is there, and you need to step back from the table and go back to the absolute basics of it, right? Yeah. Don't complicate it. Keep it simple. Concentrate. Don't move your head. Keep your eye on the object ball, and stay down on the shot, right? Yeah. But everything's screaming, move. And sometimes I played and I watch people and I go, you feel so nervous when you're playing on game shot with snooker that you can actually feel yourself shaking. And as a comedian now, I don't think about that. That doesn't affect me, and I've done probably more hours on stage than I've ever done playing snooker. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And you've got to the point now where you experiment a little bit with it, and if you're not feeling well, you can still not phone in, but you can still function at a reasonable level. And I always think it did help me. It did help you. It did help me. I didn't think it had any help on me, but I do now, because I sometimes play snooker now, and I went away to do a tour in Canada, and Terry Alderton, who you may or may not have had in this car, and if you have,
no, not had him in the car,
in the boot, bound and gagged like I would have done. Love you. But he came with me, and it was amazing, because when you play snooker, you want your own cue and you want favourable conditions. And, and sometimes when you're a comedian, and most times you're not in a room that's optimum conditions, which I think is a theatre, right? That is, but you have to learn to play that room well. And I just think it's a really good discipline not to give up on any of the rooms. It's all there for the taking, and it can be done. And you need to have the attitude that it can be done until it can't be done. And if you don't win, you're gonna fucking die trying.
That's an interesting point. The idea of play the room, not the room that you want it to be. Stop thinking negatively. I mean, really, I think that what happens is you walk a line with everything, and if you start thinking in a negative way, if negativity overrides it percentage-wise, you end up going, do you know what? If I fail here, it'll be all right. At least I got here in time. Or, do you know what? I got that side of the room, and I think
with a lot of these people, you've got to be like 300 with the Spartans. You know what I mean? Take it from them. You know, you control the room. That's the skill set. It's got to look like you're doing nothing and you're doing everything.
That's it. It's a
wicked thing to do this for a living.
It's wicked. Yeah.
Sometimes I've gone through periods where I've been somewhat erratic and fallen away from the rails. But even so, you learn from that. And this is without a shadow of a doubt, I think one of the top 2 or 3 things you could ever do, in the sense of what you get from it. Yeah. What you'd miss if you couldn't do it. Yeah. And just the vast array of situations that you're in, the people that you meet. You can talk about anything doing this. Yeah. And my brother, who's not in this game, says to me sometimes, do you know, when you watch a really good comic, it's so hard to explain how good it is. It's so amazing. It's so in the moment, right? Yeah. He said, and it's just a joy to behold. He says, when you see a really bad comic, he said, it makes you so angry. And he's right.
That is so true.
It's so right. You just sit there and go, what the fuck are you doing on stage? But in order to get good, you have to have so many air miles. And pilots that can only fly in fair weather are suspect, aren't they?
Because it's interesting what your brother said there. Like, you know, when you see a comedian, when an audience sees it,
it's a beautiful thing.
It's sublime and it transports someone. But an audience can also be angry, and you go, well, how can it? It's not a question of morality, but you know, but somehow it infuses in people this like a total polar opposite of emotion. They can either love you or hate you. You're the same person you were before and after you come off. But it is just, have they bought into what you do? Yeah. And is it actually them loving you, or is it just you create this product?
I do think that some people are really good showmen. I mean, sometimes, you know, you see acts and you go, this is clearly an act. He's got a costume. He's doing this with his hair, and it's the cadence of the language is a series of one-liners. This is clearly not how people are in real life. It's a guy doing a series of jokes. Right? Yeah. And even of itself like that, you know, you look at people like Stuart Francis and Tim Vine and Milton Jones, and you go, in that area, they are supreme.
They are supreme. They're king.
But you also like, I prefer because it suits me to be a bit more conversational, and I just like it. If you don't get it, sometimes you won't even understand that there were jokes there.
Interesting.
Fine. Because it sounds like you're just talking normally.
Yes.
But if you are engaging with it and you know, you buy into it, it's sly. Do you know what I mean?
It's sly.
And so there's real depth to it. There's real depth to it in the fact that you've layered this. There's more than one layer to it. Yeah. You can see someone who's really good a few times and go, I missed that, because you're laughing so much at some bit. But, you know, it's because you've got to be, in my opinion, if you're going to do this for a long time, or even a short time, a student of the game. You've got to be a student of the game. You've got to love it. Yeah. And loving it's harder. It's a bit like a marriage, isn't it? You know? I think you've got to really like the person. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to end up, you know, in the darkness of the night, digging a big hole and hoping that the dogs don't find it.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
Well, but I like to think I'm a romantic at heart.
But that's an interesting one. You know, that idea. Because your style, you are a master of, you know, underplaying the craft and the effort that you put into the situation, because people buy into your character, which is I'm a bit cheesed off with life. I'm a bit, you know, and you're kind of looking at things in a different perspective, and it's kind of like it's almost like you're having a moan and a complain. But somehow there's a joie de vivre underneath that, and a kind of incisive.
Don Ward, who owns the store, said to me the other day, he says, you know, some people have a kind of true line of honesty in their act, and that true line doesn't change, right? Yeah. So if you watch a film like Scarface, and all of a sudden, halfway through it, Al Pacino just suddenly nice and started giving money to charity and handing out balloons, you'd go, that bit does not fit into the hard gangster bit, right? Yeah. And I think the same goes with a comedian. You've got to stay true to the character that you're in. Yeah. And if you write a joke that happens to be funny and it doesn't suit your character, then you get rid of it. You don't do it. Yeah. When you're early on doing stand-up, any joke is a good joke.
Yeah, if it gets a laugh, it's in. Yeah. But you know, then you eventually start to look at what's your art.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And you get better. This is one of the few games where it's not like athletics, where you've got a limited window because of the aging process.
Oh no.
And you can get into your stride in your 40s. Let's hope I'm right. And
let's see.
Peak in your 60s or 70s. God, if I make it. But the fact of the matter is, you can get better and better and better.
Yeah.
If you really have a combination of things, one of which is the desire to do it, the other one's the talent, and then you've got things like you've got to keep physically and mentally able, and you're fighting against the aging process there. But when you love it, it's easier to do any of that.
Yeah.
It's like children. If you love them, they stay.
They stay.
If you don't, and it's a long walk to the canal with a sack and a brick. And I mean that in a really, really nice way, because I've just met your kids.
Yes.
And they're very nice, aren't they?
They're lovely, and there's no canals near us.
They make no noise whatsoever, and they don't leave any toys out on the stairs. And I think that's really, really good.
That's what all children should be.
It's all right.
So let's crack on with the 4 questions.
Go on then.
I've not actually prepped Sean
Go ahead.
with the what the actual questions are either, and I'm also driving him round, so he's massively disorientated.
I know where I am, actually.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I know that you are driving me slowly but surely towards a police station.
This is all just an elaborate sting operation. It really is.
Anyway,
I love the way I don't get road rage, and I love the fact that you're doing it for me as well.
If you're going to drive a car, learn how to. All right, go ahead.
I love it.
Yeah.
So Sean,
yes.
Favourite memory of comedy, either favourite gig or just a period in your career?
Watching or doing?
Doing.
Well, to be fair, you know, there's different stages of your incarnations as a comic, so you never forget the first gig.
Yeah,
right? But you don't know what you're doing, and you know, even when you do know what you're doing, sometimes you can be doing the best you can to get a 1-0 away win. Do you know?
Yes.
And only other people who are going to really know it are other comics.
And it's like your bar rises. You know, once you get that 1-0 away win.
So, but genuinely, a moment that you just go, this is unbelievable, would be being in the FOBs in Afghanistan maybe a couple of years ago, and it was with Andy Askins, and I just remember looking at him on this Chinook helicopter, and they were just flying really low over a town where we were going to go to a FOB, which was, you know, ostensibly surrounded on all four sides.
Wow. What's a FOB, by the way?
It's a forward operating base. Right?
Yeah.
So you're really deep
Nothing
into
to do
it.
with computers and memory sticks, right?
So I'm sitting there, and you could see how tense the gunners were on the helicopters.
Yeah.
And we're going in with a bunch of special forces guys, right? And we were sitting there all kitted up, and I just looked at Andy Askins, and I'm pretty sure, you know what? I'm pretty sure now in hindsight, I don't want to have been on that helicopter if it wasn't for him, because I'm pretty sure he put a word in for me that would otherwise not been put in for, but he's a nice bloke, right?
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at him and doing that, and just total joy. And
You
also,
can't hear it, yeah.
it's just unbelievable. It's like being in a movie, and it was just the most fun I've ever had in my life.
Wow, I can't believe all
really,
of this.
really couldn't believe it.
Yeah,
you know?
in order to deliver you to a place to speak
and then
some,
when you do these
some
gigs,
joy.
sometimes we got to these gigs and they knew we were coming and we were late, right? So they were all set up with chairs, waiting for us to set up all the mics and stuff like that. For all four of you get off, set up, and then there's this kind of we're going to start the show now and do it. And how much effort? There's no drinking.
No,
you're the only people who aren't armed. You go on the stage, and they want to give.
Well, they must be genuinely
no place
grateful.
to die on your ass.
Yeah, there's no room for it. But they must be genuinely grateful. Well, you've come all this way to do this.
Sometimes what happened was you felt that they weren't being as responsive as you wanted them to be.
Yeah.
And that the gig wasn't going as well because it's outside and you can't hear as well.
Yeah.
And then in the morning when you went to breakfast, you'd get. Sometimes it's really funny because you'd see people who, for all intents and purposes, looked like the people they were fighting. You know? All dressed up in the Arabic garb.
Yeah.
And then this guy with a very deep Scottish accent would go, "I saw your show last night. Very good." You know, and you just go. They're all nudging you, and everyone knew you were, and it was great, absolutely fantastic,
beautiful, like a temporary, autonomous kind of experience.
And then, of course, there's your gigs.
Yeah, coming on to the
it's just a toss-up between those two.
Well, I think that's it.
Afghanistan or the Chuckle Pouch in Hyde.
Well, I was in Barrow last night, and it wasn't quite the same, but there was definitely a sense of because you drop off the end of the country at that point. Nobody goes through Barrow, and I think there was not quite on an extreme level, but they were like, "We're really happy to see you. Thanks for visiting us. We've not seen any outsiders for a long time."
But I remember going to Billy Rickey You know, I only think of Billericay in the Ian Jury song. I don't know if you know it, but
no, I don't know that one.
And Billericay Dicky it was called. And I remember coming. I just want, you know, when you go to a place you've never been to before, you go, yeah, this is the first time I've been to Billericay, and you go in there with that enthusiasm of, well, I bet I'm off the beaten track here, and you guys would be. And sometimes it's not exactly what you expect either.
Yeah.
You realise why people don't go there. But anyway, I hope it was good for you yesterday.
Worst memory of comedy. Worst gig, worst season.
Oh, that's now you're asking. I've regularly gone through periods where I've gone, do you know what? I'm going to stop doing this because you feel that you ought to be getting further than you are. Yeah. Because sometimes you do get eaten up by what you haven't got, and you shouldn't do that, right? But occasionally, you know, you reach a low end.
Which is that whole do the gig where you're at.
But then you've got to get your head around it, which is you do this for a living, and a lot of other people would give their eye teeth and possibly a couple of limbs to do that if they really could. I've been. You know, I think, I'm not sure. There's a few, but sometimes it coincides with a period of like you're not being creative. You know, you're finding. And I always think every day I'm never going to write another joke, but such a dick that ends up happening. Do you know what I mean? You just sometimes I just think this is a ridiculous thing to do for a living, and I think it's not bringing out the best in me. It gives me a lot of free time to get up to no good. And there's a period when that happened, and I just go. It's the best thing and the worst thing for you having 23.5 hours a day to either concentrate on it, live, or just end up in rooms with people with guns. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Totally.
You know, so I think there's been a few, but what I tell you what it does do, it certainly whatever I am, right, is it's given me a great deal of satisfaction. I think I'm a verbal pirate at heart, and that's what I call this game. Yeah. And I think that this is. I mean, you talk to people who don't do it, you lose perspective if you hang around comedy too long and only comedy. Yeah. A lot of people really, you know, the fact that people come out and pay for it is unbelievable.
It's still unbelievable, isn't it?
And it's still a great thing to do. And my father said to me the other day, he said, you know, it is a service that it sounds a bit trite, but it really does provide a valuable service. It does. And I don't look at it like that because I'm a performer. I just want to be as good as I can for as long as I can. Yeah. But and there is a reason that you know, England, you know, this little isle is the centre of the most dense amount of gigs you've ever seen in your life.
In the world.
Everyone's coming here to try and make a living as a comic.
From all of it, New Zealand,
Canada, America. They can't make it in these other countries because there's not enough people who want to come out. In Australia, not enough gigs, not enough people want to come out. Yeah. Canada, great distances. Yeah. And not enough people get, you know, and these great comics come over here. And if we didn't have this here, you know, when you see, when we see great comics, I'm totally inspired. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Totally inspired. Totally, yeah.
But without this, so it's actually not about us, it's actually about the great British public who go, you know what, I'm going to pay £10-15 whatever to go and sit and listen to what you get. There's a stage, there's a mic. What have you got? What have you got? You know, and are they looking for a message, or are they just looking to, I want to just connect and I want to love you. I want to.
I was in a gig with Gary Delaney the other day, who I don't see very often, right? Yeah. So I would say we only see each other maybe half a dozen times in our lives, right? And it's like a meeting of that film Highlander, where two Highlanders meet each other.
And you
Greetings, Highlander.
Did you chop his head off?
No. And it was two friendly Highlanders.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Put the sword away. But I sat there and we watched this guy in this dressing room said something quite interesting. He said, guys, I know I'm the new kid in the block, I'm from Canada, and I know that you guys are being friendly here, but you're not really going to give me everything you've got until you see what my act's like, which is a really honest thing to say.
That's very insightful.
So we looked at him and we went, yeah, okay then. And I said, I probably won't like you anyway. So we went out, he opened the show, and you could see every road mile that he'd ever done. You could tell he'd been used to closing bars where it was difficult, people were arguing about the bill, and we watched him, and me and Gary turned around and went, and Gary said to me, he said, I like him, I like this guy. He said, this guy's good. And then we watched him do a piece of material, and then when he finished that bit and went on to the next bit, Gary said, do you know, I would have you can top that with this bit. And I said, if you top it with that bit, you can do this at the end. And then we went, should we tell him afterwards? And I said, I don't know, I still don't like him. and then he comes off stage and I said to him, I hope you don't mind, but you know that bit you do here, absolutely fantastic. I said, have you ever thought of doing this? And he went, oh no, I haven't, because sometimes as a comic you can't see the wood for the trees. Wow. And I said, some comics really don't like being told things like that. I think everyone who's any good's got lots of bits that were just nudged and shaped by other people. And he went, I'll try that. And I just went, but it was a joy to watch him. It was a joy to watch him.
And you could see he's earned his chops.
And it was like, we're getting paid to do this, man. We haven't even been on yet. And then I watched Gary and he was great. And then
Right.
I went on and closed the venue.
Love it.
Not the gig, the venue. The venue burnt down. No, it was all right.
And the Canadian was never seen again.
It's a really, really good thing to do. It's really uplifting. I hear stories, and people describe their jobs as a school with money. The bullying that goes on, and they can't wait for the weekend, and that it's a endurance test.
Yeah. So that leads me on to the third question, which is, what is your motivation for comedy? You know, like your dad says, look, you're providing a service, but you say that's not why I do it. I'm not here because I want part of the group.
When people will die, there's I was watching a programme about Winston Churchill yesterday, and they were going, he's the greatest Prime Minister of all time, and I watched the eulogy that David Cameron get and all that stuff. And then they had two historians that came on, and they said, listen, I think you're getting a rather homogenised version. They're sort of going out of their way not to mention what he was bad at, right? Okay, which is fair enough, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, part of my motivation is that I know for a fact that when you're gone, everyone's going to go, he's a fucking arsehole. But I want a couple of people to go, great comic.
But funny.
Yeah, that's about it, really.
Beautiful. Last one then.
Yeah.
Motivation for life.
That's difficult. I think I want to stay as young as I can for as long as possible and be as productive as possible without sounding too wanky. And I just think I think the standard is so high, and that you want to still be someone who's still good and not someone who used to be good. You know?
Yeah.
That's what I want to be. It's still good 20, 30 years from now if I make it.
Yeah. To not be the guy that goes, you know what?
It's so disheartening.
He was brilliant back
so disheartening to see life beat them down or them beat themselves down. And I know it's hard out there, but this is one of the few things really where there is a meritocracy in this. Probably not in television, right? But there's a meritocracy in the club circuit in that the best people get hired. And you want to be one of those for as long as possible, really as long as possible. And that it is a fearful thing, isn't it, to wake up and go, do you know what? I have no right to moan if the muse never hits me and I never write anything as good as I've got.
Wow.
But on the other hand, no arse, no get, and I'm out there chipping away, and it just makes the road miles easier. You know?
Spot on. Like, you're doing a double bill at the Comedy Store tonight. They don't care if you smashed it last night or not.
No,
they don't. They're not interested.
But also, in my head, I already know, because I told you that thing before, what I've got to sandwich between two pieces. I've got work in progress every gig I do, and that is really. I'm looking forward to it. It's optimum conditions. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But I get to say what I say, and when they see the new stuff, if it kills, right?
Yeah.
Or even gets halfway to it, first time out the trap, then I'm lifted, you know.
You're lifted.
And I go, they don't know what's new and what's not. They don't know what's new and what's not, and that's when you know you're on it. You know, you're really on the money.
You've cheated the system.
Verbal pirate, mate.
Love it. Sean Mayo, thank you.
Pleasure, mate.